Talk to me about visualization and particularly Ulysses' Grant house and for 8 years straight, sending the owner of the house a message.
Yeah. So I live where Ulysses S. Grant, the 18th president of the United States, his hunting property was. Okay. So he has a very famous estate here in St. Louis called Grant's Farm. The Anheuser-Busch family owns it. It's a legendary place in St. Louis. I live a day's ride away from that property by horse and carriage. And this is where he would do his hunting and hang out and spend his recreational time. On this property, there's a oak tree that's 310 years old, older than the country. There's his stables where his horses were kept, which was built in the 1820s. And then where my house sits, which was not his house, but is the exact place where his house was. So he had a cabin. His cabin had burnt down, and a guy built the house that I live in there. So it's there's a number of things on the property that are historic that I can't really fuck with. And it's a really cool place. Tons of energy, tons of history. You can feel it when you're there. And I love that stuff. So
you really feel it? Like,
oh, dude. Yeah.
What are you feeling exactly?
The heaviness, man. The heaviness of decisions that had to be made, which is weird that we're even talking about this right now because we just talked about that.
It's all connected.
A lot of heavy fucking decisions were made there. You could just feel it. And it's very spiritually active too. A lot of people don't believe in ghosts, but I have proof. I'm going to do a ghost podcast to show my videos and things that we have from the property. I'll show you off the show, but like they're pretty incredible. But very, very much a high energy type place like that.
Wow.
It's really cool to live there, man. I love it. Like I love living there. But when I was growing up, the girl I dated lived in Fenton, which is where I live now. And I would drive past this property when I went to her house from where I lived. And they were building this, my house is visible from the main road. And especially at night, it's lit up. You could see it. And I could see them building this like crazy house. And when I was young, dude, I drove around the nice subdivisions because I looked at the houses because I like, dude, one day that's going to be me. And what's really interesting is the house that I lived in before that, I actually did that with too.
Wow.
So there's two like really nice streets on the south side here in St. Louis. And I've lived on both of them, and both of them I visualized growing up.
That's weird.
So, but with this particular house, this is really a crazy thing. So when I was in high school, I'd see this house being built, and I would go up, and I was nosy. I wanted to see what they were doing. And I drove a Jeep back then, like a Jeep with no top, right? And I drive the Jeep up there, and I see all the construction guys working, and they would come over, and they would be like, what, can we help you? And I'm like, no, I'm just watching. And they were cool with it for a couple of days. And then after a while, they're like, hey, we're trying to work. You're in the way. Get the fuck out of here, kid. Right? So while I never thought about it really too much in terms of actually owning it. But I thought the house was fucking cool, dude. I was like, man, like when I thought of a house I wanted to live in, I thought of that exact house. So this whole time when I went and started my business, the first 3 years in business, I didn't get paid. The next 7 years in business, I made $695 a month. The next year after that, I made 180 grand. The next year after that, I made 7 figures, and I never made less than that ever again. So when I got to the 180 year, all right, where I was like, holy shit. Like, because dude, when you go from making nothing to 180, you think you're fucked. You're like, oh, but I could clearly see we were going on the up, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, this whole time, dude, I'm going through this struggle, this first 10 or 11 years. And when I think about quitting and I think about like stopping it, and I think, which was a lot, I would always think about that fucking house.
Wow.
And so like that particular house. And so when I got to be like in that 180 year where I started to realize, holy shit, dude, I might actually be able to do this. I looked up the records of the guy who owned the house, and I found him on Facebook. And I sent him a message, and I said something to the effect. I said, hey, if you live at, oh fuck, we gotta bleep that out. All right.
Yeah, we will. Don't worry. Don't worry. We can edit whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah, all right. Please bleep that.
Of course.
So I sent him this message, and I said, hey man, if this is your house, I want to buy the house maybe. He's like, well, are you a broker? And I'm like, no, I just want to buy the house. And he's like, well, make an offer. And I'm like, well, I don't have the money right now, but I want to buy the house. If you ever decide to sell it, would you please contact me? And he, I'm sure he was like, yeah, whatever, right? I don't even think he responded. And then I set an alarm on my phone. This was in April. And then every April for the next 8 years, I sent him a message. I said, hey man, it's me again. Like, I know you can see the message up there. If you're ever interested in selling the house, please contact me first. And then about like 2015 or 16, he put the house on the market and he didn't contact me. So I contacted him back and I said, hey man, like I thought you would let me know if like you were going to sell the house. And then the house was priced super high, dude. And like way higher than I would have paid for it or anybody else, clearly, because it didn't sell. And so then for the next couple years after that, it didn't sell. He took it off the market. I kept sending the same message. And then eventually like he like favorably replied and he's like, hey man, why don't you come over and have a look at it? Wow. And so Emily and I went over and we looked at the house. We walked through the house. He was super nice. We talked to him. And, I said, the guy's name was Jay, still friends with him. Good dude. Wow. He, I said, okay, well, and this time I could afford it. And he's like, well, I want this. And what he wanted was like, I'm not paying that, dude. Like he knew I wanted the house bad, right? So I kind of screwed myself in negotiation. So we haggled back and forth for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months. And then we finally got to a point where I thought it was still high for what I thought, but I was willing to pay it. And it's funny because like I sent him a meme back to tell him that I was going to buy the house. So like, meme? You know that part in Django Unchained? You seen that movie? Yeah. So you know the part where he said sold to the man with the fantastic beard? So there's a meme that says sold to the man with the fantastic beard. And that's me, right? And I fucking bought the house with a meme. And this is a house that had affected me so deeply that I didn't quit my business, which then allowed me to end up living in that house. And that's where I live today.
Crazy.
Yeah, dude. It's crazy. There's nothing by accident, dude. What you visualize will become your reality. It just will. If you're willing to put in the actions behind it. I mean, dude, like I could have thought of any house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the millions of houses on the internet, like I could have picked any house, dude. But when I thought about my life and I visualized like what it was going to look like if I didn't quit, I visualized myself driving down the driveway and like seeing, myself walking up the driveway. Like I'd see it's almost like it was pre-programmed to fucking happen.
Yeah.
How
should someone think about visualization for themselves?
I think they have to look at it as a skill set. I think you have to understand that to get good at any skill, you have to have reps. Mm-hmm. To get good at podcasting, you have to have reps. To get good at speaking, you have to have reps. To get good at weightlifting, you have to do reps. Like it's really the secret to almost anything. And so I think getting in a position where you understand, one, that it's real, and two, that it's real whether you choose it's real or not. That's the thing that people have to understand. This is no different than gravity. You could say to me, hey, gravity doesn't exist. But if we go up on the top of this building and you step off, you're going to learn really quick that it's a real thing. And people think that law of attraction is something that they can believe in or not believe in, when in reality, it's happening whether you recognize it or not. Because if you go back and track your thoughts and you audit your thoughts honestly, you are living the existence that you believe you deserve to live right now. So when you learn to control that, just like we're talking about this, through learning, accepting that it's true, and then practicing the skill set, you get better and better and better and better. And how I came across it was I was lucky enough to meet someone in 2006 who understood the law of attraction and who educated me on it and gave me the book, The Secret. Okay. And I watched The Secret and I was like, this is kind of cheesy, dude. But at the time I was so broke that I'm like, well, but I'll fucking do it. Right.
You were $60,000 to $70,000 in debt.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, I was living with my dad at that time. Yep. I had to move back home. And so I started to think, I'm like, fuck, dude, this is really cheesy, but I'll fucking commit to it. And so I started making up this little routine in my brain, and I would close my eyes at night and I would start to visualize this exact scenario. I would visualize myself. And by the way, now remember this, I'm 27 years old. I had to move back in with my dad because my business was struggling and I couldn't afford to live on my own. So I just picked the biggest dream that I could think of for me. And the biggest dream at that time that I could think of for me was owning a Lamborghini and flying private. All right. So, and I had never done either of those things. All right. And nobody I fucking knew owned a Lamborghini. I didn't know anybody that owned a Lamborghini. I didn't know anybody that flew private. I fucking didn't even, it was like, a trillion miles away from my current reality. But I picked it because I'm like, I always love Lamborghinis, and flying private seemed pretty cool. Like, right? And it is. All right. So I closed my eyes at night, and for 5 minutes before I went to bed, I'd start to think this dream, and I would see myself pull up, and I was driving a Lamborghini. I could smell it. I could feel the Alcantara, and I could see out the windshield. And as I pulled up and I turned to the right, the jet would go across my windshield where I could see the jet. And the jet was white with some blue stripes on it. Had a really nice chrome set of stairs with some wood grain on it. And I could see this going across the windshield as I turned the car to the right. And then as I opened the door would open, vertical like Lamborghini doors do. And I would look out the door and I could see the jet. And particularly I could see the steps going up to the jet. And it had a rug, and it had the wood grain steps, and it had the chrome. And I would walk up, and then I would get into the jet, and I would notice all the things in the jet. I would see the material. I would notice the wood grain. I would notice the marble. I would notice the leather seats and the color of them. And I would just think this simple 2-minute or 3-minute exercise over and over and over again, right? And the other thing that I would visualize is that I picked this up off one of the things I read, to visualize people cheering for you. I don't know why that appealed to me. When I grew up, I always felt like I was a performer of some sort, but I didn't know what. Mm-hmm. And so I picked this thing of me where I was on stage and people were clapping, and I had no context to it other than that. And I would always see that right after the jet. So right after I got on the jet, then I would see this short, very short, 3-second clip of me being on stage and people cheering. Wow. And bro, that was 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. By 2012, 5 years later, that was a fucking reality for me. Wow. I've only flown commercial one time since then. Wow. So we are talking about legitimately creating your reality. I had a white Lamborghini. I've had a bunch of them, just like the one in the visualization. Like I just said, I haven't flown on a commercial airliner in over 10 years. Mm. You see what I'm saying? This shit becomes real. And by the way, I sell out motherfucking spaces all the time to go speak. And when I'm done, guess what people do? They usually clap. Not all the time, but most of the time, So these things are real. And if we can intentionally create a reality through visualization, why wouldn't you want to do that? So you have to start, you have to buy in, you have to say, okay, this is a real thing, whether I understand it or not. This is being a realist, okay? This is important. You have to look at things for what they are, not what you want them to be or what you believe they shouldn't be. You have to say, this is what it is. And from all accounts, in my observation, this is a real thing that exists. So you have to accept that it's reality first off, and then you have to start practicing. So pick a dream that is the biggest fucking dream that makes no sense. It doesn't have to. And then dedicate that time to just seeing yourself living that dream, and don't allow yourself to get off track of the how I'm going to get to that point. This is where a lot of people get confused with this. They start to visualize this, and then during the thought process, they allow themselves to get into the how I'm going to get there. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to see yourself living this life, and we'll worry about the how, tomorrow when we wake up and take actions. So that would be my advice on how to think about it and how to start about it, and also my testimonial as to how real it is. And when I've adjusted that, of course, when I hit that, I started to adjust it, right? And when I've adjusted that, all those other things have happened the exact same way. Literally every single one of them. Wow. Every single one of them, dude. Not even miss on any of them. So I truly believe that we all have this power. I believe it's a real thing that exists. And I believe that the governments of the world have long conspired to not allow people to understand how we actually exist in reality and what allows us to create our own reality. I think we are far more powerful than we have been led to believe.